There we go. And so what I'll do is straight after the session, I will download it and I'll share it with you all. I think there was somebody who booked on who couldn't make it, who's just going to watch the recording as well. So that means that if you can't, sometimes it's nicer in these things. It's absolutely fine if you'd like to try and make along and keep up, but if you get behind or if you'd rather just watch and then make it back in your own time, then it's nice to be able to follow along with the video. The worst thing to happen is just to try and follow along and then get a bit het up and kind of, you know, it all to just get a bit stressful. That's the last thing we want to happen. So I'd rather, you know, you just kind of take it in your own time and then just know that you can watch it back as many times as you like. So what you should have with you is, or whenever now, or if you're going to make it afterwards, is a sewing machine, of course. I've got mine threaded up with contrasting thread here. I've got nice bright pink in, and that's so that you can see my stitching on my fabric. We're going to make a zippy pouch, a bit like this one here, although this one isn't lined. And I thought I would show you how to make a lined one because it's just really nice to know how to do that. And so I'll show you how to make a lined one, but I'll also explain which steps to kind of miss out if you don't want to do the lined one. So you get like a double whammy. So yeah, so you'll need your fabric. So I've got an outer fabric and an inner fabric here because I'm going to do a lined one. If you're not, just for the normal one, you just need some outer fabric and then a zip, some scissors, some pins and a tape measure is really important. And then also the zipper foot for your sewing machine. I'll go into a lot more detail about the zipper foot in a minute and just show you exactly how they work because if you've not sewn with zips before, they're quite really like kind of the opposite to a normal press foot on a sewing machine. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is to tell you how to cut out your fabric and what size to cut it out according to the size of zip that you've got. I've got two cameras that I'm going to be using for this session. So I've got like an overhead camera that I'll use for close-ups on the sewing machine as well. So every now and then I'll flip between one and the other. So sometimes with the other one, there's a little bit of a delay. So just let me know if anything's not clear and I'll pause and make sure I go through it again. Okay, I think I'm going to go to the overhead camera for this bit. That one. Yeah, there we go. Whoop. Okay, so there we are. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just explain how to cut out and what like size fabric to cut out according to your zip and according to what size pouch you would like. Okay, so here, let's start off with the zip. I've got a 20 centimetre zip. If you have a zip which isn't in the packaging, if you want to check the length of it, you need to measure from the metal to metal. So don't measure the fabric bit, just measure from here to here. So on this zip, it's 20 centimetres from there to there. So this is a 20 centimetre long zip. So then in order to work out the width of my actual fabric, I need to take the size of my the length of my actual zip and then add on 1 centimetre. So my width of my fabric is 21 centimetres. So you can do this for any, I'm just teaching you this so that you can literally make a pouch any size after this. So you can make a really long pencil case, you can make like a large wash bag, whatever you like. This is just like a nice little one to go in my handbag. But whatever it is, it's the length of the metal to metal zip plus 1 centimetre. And then, so that's the width of your fabric. And it's the same for the lining fabric and for the outer fabric. So both of my bits of fabric are 21 centimetres wide. And then for the length of the fabric is basically kind of the depth of your pouch. I always think it's much easier if you just have a fold at the bottom rather than a seam. So I'll teach you that way first, but then I'll explain to you if you've got directional fabric, because this is plain fabric, it's fine having a fold at the bottom. Whereas if you've got a pattern which has got a top and a bottom, you'll want it the right way around on both sides. Let's say for now that you've got a plain fabric and it doesn't matter which direction it goes in. you need to work out what depth you'd like your pouch to be. So say I would like the depth of my pouch to be 15 centimeters deep. So you want to double that because you've got a fold at the bottom. So 15 centimeters times 2 is 30, and then add on 2 centimeters for the seam allowance at the top. So because I want the depth to be 15 centimeters, the length of this piece of fabric is 15 times 2 plus 2. So that's 32 centimeters. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you need exactly the same size for the other piece of fabric as well. So I'm going to probably have this one as my outer and this one as my lining, because I like this one. If you have a directional fabric, you just need to cut it in two. So you'd have, if we say we want it 15 centimeters deep, but we've got directional, you need to add your 1 centimeter for the top, but also a centimeter for the bottom. So it would be 17 centimeters in depth for each of those two pieces, and then just put those two pieces on top of each other, and then along the bottom you'd sew across here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So then when it's opened out, you've still got a piece which measures you know, the original desired length of fabric. If that's not clear to anybody, make it known now, otherwise I'm going to continue. Right, so I'm going to teach you another quick trick first of all, which is really handy thing to know how to do. I'm not actually, well, maybe I'll start doing it. Do I have another zip? Not sure. I don't. I'll just tell you how to do it. So it's really easy to shorten a zip with a sewing machine. So if I take this zip over to my sewing machine, I can show you. Here we go. Oops. Actually, I might turn that light off. It's sometimes a bit flickery. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my sewing machine to zigzag stitch. I'll do that now. And then I'm going to set it to the widest zigzag setting, but the shortest length setting. So on my machine, the widest zigzag width is number 5, and the shortest length is obviously 0. And then if you pop your zip, so say you wanted to shorten this zip to 10 centimeters, you would measure with your tape measure from that top bit of metal up there down to where it's 10 centimeters, which is here. Usually I'd get a little fabric pen or something and just put a little mark on. So this is just like an extra tip to show you. We're not actually doing this, just to be clear. And then what we're going to do is put the zip onto our sewing machine with it absolutely centered, and then we're going to do that zigzag stitch over the teeth of the zip here. I'm not actually going to do it, like I say, I'm just going to show you just because it's a super tip to know how to do. Whoop. So you'd sit it under like this. There we go. And then pop it down. Whoop. My camera's riding around a bit. Sorry, I'm probably giving you all a headache. There we go. That will be better. Okay, and I'm going to lower my presser foot. I'll take out the pin now. And then what you do is, I like to do it just manually with the wheel. So you do stitches left, right. I'll literally just do a couple, but you do maybe like 10 of them if you wanted to do it for real, and then pull it out, and you can see there's a line of stitching going over the teeth of your zip. And then whoop, you just cut it. And then what you would do with, not with your best fabric scissors, but with some household scissors, is just cut across underneath, across these plastic teeth here. Of course, you couldn't do it if you had a metal teeth zip, but it's unusual now to have metal teeth zipped, really, so it would be unlikely. Anyway, so that's just an extra little tip for you that I wanted to share. So now what I'm going to do is just take these stitches out of here. There we go. So now we need to start the construction of the pouch. So first of all, if we take the zip like this, I'm also going to need the pins, and then take the outer fabric for your pouch. And the first thing you need to do is open your fabric out so that it's right side facing up, like this. Oops. There we go. So it's right side facing up, and then take your zip, and you want to have your zip right side facing down, like this. So it's right sides together. I've got the wrong side of the zip facing up. Let's open up the zip slightly, so about halfway, like this. And we're going to line up the raw edges. So the top raw edge of the fabric is lined up with that top edge of the zip. And then I'm going to center the zip as well. So you should have 1/2 centimeter poking out on this end and 1/2 centimeter poking out on this end of the fabric of the zip. And then we can pin the zip down. Whoops, there we go. These are such lovely things to know how to make, because they just make such brilliant gifts for people. And once, if you're not lining, so it takes a little bit longer if you're lining it, but once you know how to do it, you can actually rattle one up really quickly. It's really, really good. Okay, so that's pinned in place. Now, what we're going to do is stitch down this side here onto the fabric of the zip, through the fabric of the zip and through the fabric. And we want to have our stitching quite close up towards the zipper teeth. So what I'll do now is I'll show you the zipper foot and just exactly how much easier it makes it rather than a normal presser foot. So I'll get a normal presser foot first. This is a normal presser foot here. So with this type, as you can see, it's got the hole in the middle and then metal down either of the two sides. So your needle goes up and down in that hole in the middle, and the metal on either side holds the fabric in place and makes sure that you know, nothing kind of goes astray. So if we were to try and use this presser foot to stitch down this side here, the fact, because you've got metal either side of where your needle goes, it means that your line of stitching is going to be really, really far away from those zipper teeth. So it's just not going to work. So instead, with a zipper foot, it's got exactly the opposite. Yours might look slightly different. It might not have this bit here, but the actual bit of the foot at the bottom will have metal in the middle with a gap either side of the metal. And what that means is that you can actually have your line of stitching quite close up to your teeth of your zip, like this. So we'll go down like this, and the needle is going to go in that little notch there in the foot. So it's really great because we've got metal going around in a notch like this. It means that you kind of, it's quite hard to sew over the teeth of the zip, but it's kind of, as long as you keep your eye on where you're going, it's quite easy just to stay nice and close to the teeth like that. You don't want to sew, ideally you don't want to sew right up to the teeth of the zip, because if you do that, it can make it quite hard to open and close the zip. Sometimes the zip itself, the puller, can get caught in the fabric. So if you can try and make your actual line of stitching like say 3 or 4 millimeters away from the teeth itself, that would be ideal. Okay, so let me just put my zipper foot on my machine quickly, and then I can show you stitching. There we go. So I'll pop that pin back in. I always make sure that I have my pins with the point facing away from me and the end towards me, and that means as I stitch down, I can just pull the pins out as I go. You might sometimes see people have their pins across like this and just sew straight down. I don't like to do that generally anyway, but I especially don't like to do it when I'm sewing a zip, because I just think there's more chance that you can kind of, there's kind of more going on, and there's more chance that you might not have a nice straight line against the teeth of your zip. So I think it's better to have the pins like this. It's also really important to have your zip halfway open, or even a bit more actually, maybe 3/4 open. So we're going to stitch down from the top to within like maybe 5 centimeters of where that puller is here. And then what we're going to do is put the needle down lift the presser foot up, and then close the zip a bit so it goes a bit behind like that, lower the presser foot down again, and then keep stitching down to the bottom. And that way it means you don't have to sew, kind of navigate going around that zipper pull, so you have a nice straight line of stitching, in theory, all the way down your zip. Okay, so I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine. There we go. I don't turn the bulb on my machine when I do this, because it tends to really flicker and be a bit distracting. So that's why that's not on, just for your information. Okay, so hopefully you can see. Try and get it nice and close, but still in focus. So I've put my zipper foot is on, or let me first of all just make sure I'm on the right stitch again. So I was on zigzag before, so I'm on straight stitch, and I'm going to have a length of about 2.5. Now I need to move my zipper foot along like this, just to make sure that my needle is sitting nice and neatly in that gap there, which it is. Perfect. Like I say, zipper feet can vary slightly, so you might not need to do that with yours. Okay, so I've got, I'm all ready to go. I'm going to start doing stitching, a little bit of reverse at the end, and we can keep going down. Pull the pins out as you go. I'm going to stop here with the needle down. I'm going to lift my presser foot up and then close the zip so that it goes behind where I've already done some stitching, and then I can stitch the home straight here. There we go. Perfect. Okay, that's the first line of stitching done. Bring you back here so you can see. So you'll start to see now, it's very satisfying. I always snip off all the ends of threads as I go, just because it keeps everything a bit neater. If you can do that as you go. So if I pull this out, you can see it kind of looks like it's supposed to, which is very satisfying, I think. Love it. Okay, so now we need to repeat that process, but on the other side. So I've still got my fabric facing upwards, but I've got the other short end at the top now. I'm going to fold the bottom up, which is attached on the other side of the zip to the other end of the fabric. And then this time I'm going to lay the other long edge of the zip against the short edge of the fabric. And again, match up the raw edge of the fabric, make sure it's nice and centered. So you should have about 0.5 centimeter poking out either side of your fabric of the zip. Oh, where have the pins gone? And then pin this edge in place. And now this time we'll be stitching down the closed edge first, and then down the open edge of the fabric. So this time maybe make sure it's about halfway down so that you can do a bit of stitching before you have to move the zip backwards again. So let's pin it down. There we go. I always like to try and make sure I have a bit more of the stitching to do with it open, because it's just so much easier to stitch down there. Okay, we've done that, so then we can do exactly the same again down the other edge of the zip. So I'll take you back to the sewing machine. Oops. There we go. Right, I always do the first couple of stitches manually, because I like to just know the direction I'm headed and the speed I'm going in before I put my foot down. Okay, I'm going to stop there, put my needle down, lift my presser foot up and then move the zip behind. If you have trouble moving your zip behind, if you grab hold of the lever that lifts up and raises and lowers your presser foot, you should be able to push it up a little bit further if you keep pushing up. Sometimes you need to do that with when you're moving the zip. There we go. Brilliant. So now if I bring it over, it's really starting to take shape. It's very exciting. So if I turn it right side out and open and close, you can see it looks really, really lovely, like an actual pouch. So there is actually a step that you could do at this point to make the simplest type of zipper pouch that I know, and that is, let me just trim off those bits of thread again. If you turn it inside out again and give it fold it over so that the zip is just kind of slightly, so it's about 3/4 open and it's slightly down from the top. And then if you were to stitch a pin and stitch down the left side and the right side and turn it out, you'd have a kind of like a pencil case with the zip on the front like that. You need to make sure that you have, when you do that, those 2 lines of stitching, that your zip is slightly open, otherwise you won't be able to turn it the right side out again. But if you just imagine, that would be like a pencil case kind of like that, with nice neat and edges on each side. So if you want a super speedy one, you could do one of those. But now I'm going to show you how to do the lining. Let me just keep my eye on the time. Okay, we're still doing well. That's good. So let me get it right. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of lining fabric and let's start on this side here. Okay, so I've got the zip facing upwards. Let's make the zip itself is going to be half closed, half open. I've got the wrong side of the zip facing upwards. So the bag itself that we've made already is inside out at the moment. I've got the right side of the fabric inside here, the wrong side of the fabric facing outwards. Then I'm going to take my lining piece of fabric. It's a little bit tricky to see for you guys to see the right side and the wrong side. This is the right side of the lining fabric. This is the wrong side of the lining fabric. And what I want to do is, again, line it up with, on the other side of the zip, with the raw edge of the fabric in line with that long edge of the zip. So it's the same as what we did before, but you're kind of making like a zip sandwich with the fabric. I'm just going to open up and show you again. So I've got the zipped pouch here, inside out, and I've got it so that the zip's flat and the zip is wrong side up. And then I've got the lining fabric and I'm placing it on top so that it's centered. So I've got 1/2 centimeter of the zip either edge, and the raw edge of the fabric is flush with that long edge of the zip. And now I'm going to stitch, I'm going to pin it on, sorry. There we go. Like this. There's a little trick you can do here. So I'm pinning it on first of all. It's just deliberating which way to teach you, but I think I'm going to show you the tricky way. Well, not tricky way, the easier way, which is a trick. So I've pinned it on, but actually if I turn it over, I've got a line of stitching here that we stitched before that I know is exactly where I want it to be. So if we were to stitch on this side, you kind of have to go by touch. You have to sort of feel your way, which you can do. I'll show you. You can kind of feel exactly where the teeth of the zip are, and you can make sure that you stitch just inside the teeth of the zip. You can see my nail can feel it quite easily, just as the zipper foot would on the sewing machine. However, if we flip it over, you don't need to do that, and you can make sure that you just sew again along the line of stitching that you previously stitched. One thing you do need to make sure of is that all of these other bits of fabric are kind of away from that line of stitching, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just take my pins that I've already put in and flip them over and put them through this side of the fabric instead. There we go. So my zip is still halfway open. So the puller of my zip is here. I can feel that it's quite chunky. So I'm going to start at this end, stitch down to about here, put my needle down, lift my presser foot up. I'm going to have a little bit of a wriggle around inside here, pull the zip behind, and then lower my presser foot and keep stitching to the bottom. So let me show you that. So this, again, just to clarify, is a step that you would take if you want to make a lined zipped pouch. If you don't want to do lining, you can, you can miss out this step. That's fine. Sorry, I'm trying really hard to make sure it's nice and clear for you. There we go. Okay, so needle down. Let's do a couple of stitches manually just to be on the safe side. And then I'm going to follow the previous line of stitching that I've already made, just stitch right on top of it. And stop there because my zip puller is about here and my needle is down, so that's lovely. So I can lift the presser foot up and then move the zip puller behind. Lower the presser foot back down again, and then just keep stitching along that same line that we've already made. There we go. So back over to the middle, and you can see now, oh, I just love it. It's so satisfying. Just looks so professional, I think. So now we've got on this side of the pouch, we've got the lining on the inside with no raw edges showing and the right fabric on the correct fabric on the outside. And yeah, it's looking lovely. So now what we need to do is mimic that job that we just did on that side on the other side. So we've got this, so we don't have a raw edge of zip on this side as well. So let's turn it back inside out again. So I'm turning the main patch inside out. I'm going to half close my zipper, and this time again I'm going to have the zip wrong side facing up like this with the raw edges at the top, and I'm going to take the other short edge of my lining fabric, and then this time I'm going to line that up. Again, it's wrong side of the lining fabric facing up. This is the right side here on the inside, and I'm going to line up the raw edge of this fabric with flush with that straight edge of the zip. And we just want to make sure again that you've got 0.5 centimetre at this side, 0.5 centimetre at that side. So all the fabric should be nicely lined up here at this edge, more or less. If it's slightly out, you mustn't worry about it too much. So let's do the same as before. Put a few pins in, and then I'm going to flip it over again and use the stitching that we did before as our guide. So I'll flip the pins over to the other side. So that's pins in this side, flip it over. And sorry, I just cut off these long edges of thread. And now I'm just going to flip the pins over so that I can follow this line of stitching that we've already made here. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So just double check that you don't have any bits of fabric kind of getting in the way. Make sure that your zip is half open, and then we can go back over to the sewing machine and stitch down this side. There we go. do a couple of stitches manually as per usual, and then off we go. Okay, so my zipper is here, so I'm going to put my needle down, lift my presser foot up, and then move the zip to behind where we've already done some stitching. Then I can lower the presser foot down and just stitch to the very end. There we go. Okay, back into the center. Oh, we're doing good. Halfway there, we're doing very well. If anybody's still sewing along, well done you. Okay, so now it's a bit like, oh, is this right? What's it going on? Does it look okay? But yes, everything's correct. Don't worry at all. I'm going to open up the zip and then turn it all the right way out. And now you can see, you can really see it starting to take shape. I go like this. Oh, it's hard to get it in the middle. There, you can see it's really starting to look a bit more like it should do at the end now. So one of the extra steps that I like to do at this point, which I'm going to show you as well, is some top stitching. So you could just leave it like this, but actually there's a risk that your fabric will kind of roll in towards your zipper teeth, and then sometimes when you open and close the zip, it can get caught in the zipper teeth. So if we open the zip all the way out like this, and then what we're going to do is pull the fabric away from the teeth of the zip. So if you weren't doing a lined pouch, you can pick up at this point again now. So you would just have the outer fabric attached to your zip, and it will look just like this, but without that extra lining fabric on the inside. And you could also do this step just for an unlined pouch. In fact, it's slightly easier to do it for an unlined pouch. What we want to do is pull the fabric away from the teeth of the zip, so we know that it's nice and kind of pulled taut, and then put a pin in, holding it so there are no puckers kind of of the fabric going up towards the teeth of the zip. And we want to do that all the way down the fabric like this. You want to make sure that the fabrics that you're using, especially if you're making a lined version, aren't too bulky. So even though it's denim, for my lining, it's super lightweight denim. It's not bulky at all. And this is a very thin double gauze cotton fabric on the outside as well. If you're making a pouch which isn't lined, you can afford to go quite a lot heavier weight if you'd like to. Right then, so I have pinned through all of the layers of fabric here. So that's actually through quite a few layers. It's through 2 layers because you've got the top and the seam allowance of the outer fabric, you've got the zip fabric, and then you've got the inner fabric and the seam allowance as well. So that's through 5 layers altogether. And what we're going to do is sew a line just inside the fold of the fabric. So the actual stitch line is going to be through all of those layers of fabric, but just kind of about where that needle is now on my fabric. So I'm going to take it over. The pink might look quite nice actually in contrast. In hindsight, I was doing it to contrast, but actually I think it looks quite nice. Okay, so it's really important that you have the zip fully open on your pouch. And I also find it easier to take the arm off the sewing machine at this stage as well, because there's a little bit of maneuvering to do around, like with the pouch at the bottom. Now you'll notice now I still like to do this step with the zip foot on my sewing machine, but I want my stitching to actually be on the other side. So I want it to go in on the right hand side so that my stitching is closer to on the right than the left. So what you should be able to do is adjust your zipper foot and move it along. Just double check. I need to move it a little bit further. There we go. So now my needle is going down on the right hand notch on my zipper foot. So I'm going to place my presser foot down right at the end of the fabric up here. Take the first pin out. Oh, sorry. Try and get nice and close. There we go. And then we can start stitching, doing the top stitching just to keep all that fabric away from the zip. Now this line of stitching is going to be on show, so it's nice if you can try and make it as neat as possible, whereas the others were all hidden away on the inside. Because this fabric's double gauze and it's quite floaty, I'm risking getting some puckers, but I think I'm okay. But that's why I'm putting my presser foot up every now and then and just kind of evening out the fabric. Oops. And then because we've got the zipper foot on, sorry, my needle should be down, we should be able to stitch right down just past the zip puller. There we go. Oh, I can see a chat comment. Hang on a mo. Nope. So if your fabric is heavier, you don't need to sew twice. No, you could use slightly longer stitches if you've got really heavyweight fabric, because if they're too short, it might kind of you just might find it slightly easier if you have slightly longer stitches. I always like to err on slightly longer stitches anyway, because I think it just means that there's less chance of any puckering or anything like that. So I have my machine usually set to about 3 for the stitch length, but all machines vary slightly, to be honest with you, so it would be kind of slightly different depending on which machine you've got. Okay, so look, if I hold it down now, you can see that this edge has got the top stitching and this edge hasn't. So let's cut those ends of thread off. So if I bring my zip up and down, it's moving nice and freely. It's still moving freely on this side, but it just means that it's never, your fabric is never going to go into the puller of the zip if you've got this top stitching here. Leslie, let's see. I seem to have a very wide gap either side of the zip. So do you mean, oh, but of the, so if you've got a wide gap of the fabric, so say, because my fabric folds are really close to my zip teeth, if you've got more of the zip fabric showing, what you have done is not stitched quite up close enough to the zip teeth when you're stitching. So if I go back out again, it's a bit harder to show now, I've got both sides, but this line of stitching here is quite up close to the actual teeth of the zip. It's not right butted up against it. It's tricky. It's something that you kind of get a feel for it. Rather, it's really like anything, I guess, with practice you get better and better. So what you could do, Leslie, is you could do these lines of stitching again, but stitch closer into the teeth of the zip, and then you shouldn't have that gap when you actually open it out like this. Hopefully that's what you meant. If it's not, then feel free to turn your camera on and you can show me if you'd rather. Okay, so let's do that top stitching on the other side now. So I'm going to open the zip up again all the way to the bottom, and now unusually, usually you always have the bulk of your fabric to the left and the little bit of fabric to your right. But because I don't want to start at this end, I want to start at this end, I'm going to have this bulk of the fabric to the right hand side. Will become a bit clearer when I show it to you on my sewing machine, but do exactly the same. So just with this side of the fabric now, I'm going to pull the lining and the outer fabric away from the teeth. If you haven't got it lined, you're just pulling the top fabric away from the teeth. It's easier, it's definitely a bit easier, and just putting your pins through the top fabric and the zip. There we go. Another one. That will do. And so now if I go back to the sewing machine, because the lovely zipper foot allows us to go from side to side, I'm going to go back to the other side like this. Just double check it's lined up. That's great. Oops. Oops, sorry. And then I'm going to pop it under this side. Unusually, for stitching with your sewing machine, the bulk of the fabric is on the right hand side, but we need to do that in order to get our stitching up nice and close to the zip on this side. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable. So I'll do a couple of stitches manually again. And then okay. No, we're not. I think I might have to rethread. Hang on. Sounds a bit unhappy. I quite like it when this happens because it just goes to show that everybody's machine misbehaves sometimes, and it's definitely not you, and you've not done anything wrong. So normally, I've just got a little bit of I had a kind of little clump of thread underneath there. So what I normally do whenever that happens is I just take my bobbin out and then completely and then pop it back in again. That usually seems to sort of reset it and make sure that whatever was upsetting it is sorted out. Okay. Right, try again. Oh, sorry. Okay, so in terms of adjusting my zipper foot, so there are two types of zipper foot that you might have. Sorry, I'm just answering Marguerite's message on the chat. So with this type, there's a screw on the back here. If I loosen that screw, I can just move my zipper foot left and right here. If you have, I think I've got one, hang on a moment. Fetch it. If your zipper foot looks a bit more like this, you can see what with this one, what you'll have, you have this kind of claw bit that be on your sewing machine there. And then you slot this zipper foot. I'll do it over here actually. So this is kind of the claw bit that's actually on the main body of your sewing machine. I've just taken it off to show you. And then you clip your zipper foot underneath there. So what you can do is you can have your zipper foot on that side or on that side. And that's how you move it from left to right. They do all vary slightly, but that's kind of the principle of it. And if you've got the one like I just showed you with that I'm using with the screw, I literally just loosen this green screw at the bottom and I can slide this arm here left and right, and that will mean that I'm either stitching on the left or the right hand side of the actual metal of the presser foot itself. Hopefully that makes sense, Marguerite. If not, just let me know and I'll try again. Okie doke. So I'm going to start stitching down the other side. Oh, Leslie had it on the wrong side. Okay, that will make sense. Oh, I'm glad we've got to the bottom of that. Oh, you see, you've learned it. That's great. You won't do that again. So I'm going to do a couple of stitches manually. And then stitch down. I'm sewing, sorry, I'm at a very awkward angle. So my line is probably not going to be straight at all. Just making sure that it's nice and clear for you guys. Get that bit of thread out of the way. Try to make it straight. There we go. Just pull the pins out as we go. Doing a little bit of puckering again, but for me that's just because this fabric is so kind of, it's almost like muslin really. It's super buttery soft. Ooh, I'm going a bit wonky. Crikey. Sorry. There we go, all the way to the bottom. Perfect. Okay, is that another message? Oh no, that's all good. Okay, so we're almost there. Brilliant. Oh, doing really well for time. That's great. I'm just going to put the arm back on my sewing machine again. And then bring this in front of me so you can see. Okay, so now let's cut off any of those long bits of thread so they don't get in the way. All caught up. There we are. And then the final step is to sew down the edges. Now, again, let's make sure that we've got the zip open halfway. And that is because when we've stitched down the two sides, we need to have this open in order to turn the zipper pouch back the right way around again. So there's two different ways you can do this. If you, certainly if it wasn't lined, all you would do is turn it inside out like this. You'd have the actual zip right on the very, very top. So it's almost the kind of the flat bit of the zip is right at the very top, and then pull the other bits down and then pin down here. Have these edges of the zip here lined up beautifully and pinned down here as well. Stitch down those two sides and then turn it the right side out through this gap here. And we can do the same with it lined as well. So what we could do now is pin down this side, pin down this side, stitch down those two sides and turn it around the right way. But there's also a method of making sure that all of the raw edges on the side seams are concealed as well. Oops, I'll just double check. Hopefully I've made it so it's going to work. Oh. Okay. We're just about going to be okay. What I should have said was, terribly sorry, but with your the top stitching that we just did should, I'm so sorry, should have started a centimetre in from the edge. I've kind of started a centimetre in from the edge of either of mine, but I forgot to say that to you. I'm terribly sorry. What you could just do is snip a bit of that top stitching if you wanted to, or with an unpicker. Actually, that one's a bit close. That one's a centimetre. But the reason we want to do that is because in order to sew it down the two sides so that none of the raw edges are showing, what we need to do is open it out completely flat like this. So it's inside out with both of the folded edges of the outer at the top here, and both of the folded pouch bits of the lining at the bottom, and the zip is kind of cutting it in half across the middle. And then at the edges, so mine goes in slightly, so I've not done it absolutely perfectly on this side, but you know, hey ho, it's not the end of the world. We want to have it so that the zip, if you imagine, we want the zip with the right side of the zip face is going to be facing up towards the top here. So I want the two edges of the zip going downwards. So the zip is kind of like folded back on itself so that the right side here is exposed and the wrong side is kind of folded on the inside like that towards the lining. So the zip's folded down towards the lining. And then you're going to have the zip flat like that. So it's folded on itself. I'm going to put the first pin in here. And then the reason why I wanted to start the stitching 1 centimetre in from the edge is because the outer fabric you want to be lying flat. So you don't want to be ideally sewing a crease in the outer fabric. The lining fabric, on the other hand, is folded. The seam allowance on the zip is folded back on itself, so that one's fine. So I'm going to put a pin through here first of all, and then I'm going to keep pinning up here, making sure that the two raw edges of the folded bit of the outer are flush with each other. And then keep going down here. I'm just going to have to pretend that these ones line up. Oops. It'll be fine. No one will know. Okay. And then turn it across. Is the time limit on the recording? No, there is not a time limit on the recording. You can have the recording forever because I download it to my YouTube channel for you. Give it to you on there. Oh, look, this is where silly old me. I didn't line that up properly. Anyway, I'm sure yours will look much neater than mine. Yeah, so you'll have the recording forever, so you don't need to worry, it's not going to expire. There are a few other videos on my YouTube channel that you'll be able to see at the same time as well, but the one that you'll have will be unlisted, so nobody else will have the access details to it, just you guys will. So don't worry about that. Okay, so then, oops, didn't do that quite properly. So if I start in the middle, we want the two bits of the zip to be lined up. So if I get this way, you can see the top of the zip, the two top edges of the zip are completely lined up with each other, and they're folded downwards again towards the lining. So I'm going to put the first pin in here. And then keep pinning up towards the fold. Oh, rat bags, that's really going to annoy me. Oh, well. I always think, you know what, if I do a little bit of a mistake here and there, it's probably quite encouraging, because then you can just sort of, you know, see. Happens to everyone. Now, on this side, we're not going to sew all the way to the bottom. And this gap here, so I've put one pin along horizontally, and that will be my sense checker to make sure I stop sewing at that pin. And then I've got some space in which to turn my pouch the right way round again. We also need to definitely make sure that the pin is, the zip, sorry, is still halfway open, otherwise you'll come unstuck. Okay, so let's start on this side first of all. So I'm going to stitch all the way down here with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. What you need to be super careful about is there's a little chunk of metal here on the end of the zip. So you need to make sure that you don't accidentally sew through that. So what I always do, so your stitching should be just inside it. It depends how, you know, where you go, but what I always do anyway is when I get to this point, I always just use my the flywheel on my machine, and I just go manually. And that means if you find that your needle is going to hit that, you can just slightly adjust it by a couple of millimeters and make sure that you go down to the side of the metal instead. Okay. Oh, and the other thing to say is we can swap back over to our normal presser foot now. Where's my screwdriver? Oh, here it is. So on this one, you have to, oh, I don't even need it. Undo that little screw. Off. Oops. Put this housing back on under here, tighten it back up, and then I can just sit my regular one back in. I'm just going to quickly make sure it's super tight with my, well, a bit tighter than that with the screwdriver. There we go. Should finish bang on time, everybody. I'll stick around for a few questions at the end if anybody's got any as well. So don't worry if you've got something you've not asked yet, but you'd like to. I'll hang around if you'd like me to. Okay, so about a 1 centimetre seam allowance. A couple of stitches manually first of all. Where's my pin cushion? There we go. And then down we go. Okay, we're getting closer to where the zip is. So I'm just going to start stitching manually with the wheel. Oh, there's the metal. Just going to move it slightly across over. Help it along a little bit. There we go. My seam allowance is definitely not 1 centimetre there. Never mind. Okay, and then repeat exactly the same on the other side, but if you just remember on the other side, we're not going to go all the way down to the bottom. Whoops. So it's already pinned in place, nice and neatly. Okay, we're getting close to the zip again, so I'm going to just use my wheel and anticipate hitting. Oh, we might be all right on this side, I think. Yeah, we're good on this side, so I've obviously missed the metal on this side. I'm just going to still keep going manually just to be on the safe side. And then when we know we're over the zip, you can keep stitching down to the bottom. Oh, sorry, fly just flew in my eye. Oh, oops, now, so here, just took out my sense check zip pin. I'm just going to zip down to here, do a little bit of reverse and leave this gap here in order to turn it round the right way. And then we can turn it all the right way around and we're done. How exciting. Just snip all these bits off. Oops. Snip all these bits off of thread so that it's nice and neat. Oops. Then I'm going to start turning it out through this gap here. And then you want, oh, sorry. I didn't realize you were sliding. Camera. Okay, that should be okay. So I'm turning it out through this gap here and through the gap inside in the zip that we've left because the zip was open. And then you can pull the right side fabric through like this. And then you might want to give it a little press at this point as well. Depends what your fabric's like, I suppose. And then on the right side, you can push those corners all the way out like this. You might want to put something inside, like a crochet hook or something, pencil, not too sharp, to push those corners out. Let's open the zip up completely. And then the lining, let's bring that end up. Or look, because I didn't start 1 centimetre in from the edge, it's slightly puckered there, the other end will be okay. And push your lining down to the inside. And then what you can do on this gap on the lining here is you can just machine sew that together if you want to, or you can hand stitch it together. I'll just leave it for now because you don't need me to show you how to do that. But if you wanted to machine it, you just keep it like that. You'd obviously see that little bit of stitching. You do a little line of stitching just close to the edge on there, but that would be fine because it would be on the lining, or you could just do like a ladder stitch or something to keep those edges together. I'll pop a pin in for now. But there we go, all done. Oh my goodness. Oh, mine is a little bit puckered on that side, not too bad, because and that is because I didn't do my 1 centimetre in from the edge. This one's a bit neat, so you can see. So if you can see here perfectly, so my top stitching on this example starts just in from the edge. Can you see that? So that means you get a much neater curve and kind of corner in the top of your bag. Silly old me, forgot to tell you about the 1 centimetre from the edge from your top stitching. I'm very sorry. But hopefully you caught it in time and you were able to unpick it a little bit. But there we go, all sorted. So let me come back to you. Oh, right, I think that's pretty much, yay! Oh my gosh, that was good timing, 3 minutes over. That's pretty good considering we did a lined one as well. Right, so any other questions you've got at this point, please feel free to ask me. Before we go into that, I'm going to download it right now. I'll upload it privately to my YouTube channel, and I'll send you all a link so that you can access it whenever you like. I'll never delete it, so you'll always be able to see it, and only you guys will have access to it. And then also, if there's any other questions that you think of after the session, or say if you're going it on your own after the session and you come unstuck or you forget how to do something, you can always email me or message me on Instagram. It's at @themakery_Kate on Instagram. I get back to that on my email quite regularly. My email is kate@themakery.co.uk. So yeah, any questions then please feel free, but at the moment, whilst you've got me, I can answer anything else. Okay, Marguerite, are there still places available for your crossback apron course, and is it very difficult? Yes, there are still places, and it is easier than this one. So if you've done this one, you'll definitely be fine for the crossback apron. It takes longer because we actually kind of make the pattern in the workshop. So you just start off, I think it's with 1.5 meters of fabric, and you actually cut it out in the lesson in the workshop. That's why it's longer, but in terms of techniques, it's easier, so you'll be fine. Any other questions that anybody else might have whilst I'm here? No? Okay, well, I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you've learned lots, and I would love to see any photographs of anything that you make. Just please tag me. It's so nice to be able to see, because I love doing these sessions, but it's obviously it's not quite the same as actually seeing you all close up, like in face to face. So it's really nice to see things afterwards as well. Oh, seam allowance. Yes, the instructions did allow for seam allowance, so the extra centimeters here and there that we added included your 1 centimeter seam allowances. Maybe I'll tell you what I'll do on the YouTube video. What I'll do in the comments underneath is I'll write out the dimensions and lengths that you have to cut, so that you've got that in writing as well as in the video, so that you can just see that really quickly without having to jump to that point. That would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, anyway, so yeah, please feel free to share anything, and have a lovely evening. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.